you're talking about people who really ask like, oh, you can really communicate with animals. I have met a lot of skeptics. But I have to say the people who are more skeptical will become the strongest believers.
Yeah, that's very true. I always say to clients, it's very good to be skeptical. Usually it's the husbands, because usually they get dragged by the wives, and the wives are like, oh, come on, we're going to go to the animal communicator. And then the husband sits there and goes, yeah, sure. And then you see throughout the session, the husband kind of relax and kind of thinking, oh, how does she know this? And but again, being skeptical.
Sometimes it's very intimate.
Yeah,
The information.
Your animals know everything about you.
What's up, and what's up?
And welcome to another episode of the KopiBros show presented by the Chit Podcast Network. Now, this episode we have two very, very interesting guests, Lucia and Celine, because I think this is the first time any of us is speaking to any animal communicators. So just want to ask Brandon, after the interview, what do you think is one of the more interesting things that you took away from it?
Quite a lot of things. When I heard animal communicator, I just thought more towards dog, and that they just like understand how a dog works, and like maybe they just read into like how
a bit like Cesar Millan.
Yes, a bit like Cesar Millan. It's completely not like Cesar Millan. They communicate not just to dogs. There was even elephant. There were times that my hair stand on my arm. I felt lah.
Yeah. So to add to what Brandon said, right? I think they sort of spoke about how to get on the same wavelength as animals. To a certain level, you can sort of feel what the animals are feeling, right? And then I remember one very, very interesting story was that one of them actually felt when the cat was excited about trying to eat a moth. You remember that? How the moth tasted? They were able to feel the moth in their mouth. I was just like, wow. Yeah. So without further ado, I think we should all tune into the episode. And welcome to another episode of the KopiBros show presented by the Chit Podcast Network. Now, today we have with us two very, very incredible guests, because we are diving into the incredible world of animal communication. So joining us are two amazing guests who have made it their mission to bridge that connection between human and animals. First, we have Lucia here, originally from Holland or the Netherlands, but based in Singapore for the past 20 years. Okay, she's a professional animal communicator, a certified body talk practitioner, and she teaches the Linking Awareness Journey, a powerful 3-day animal communication workshop that helps people tap into intuitive communication and animal consciousness. Alongside her is Celine from Rhythm of Life Holistic Path, also based in Singapore. She's a Reiki master, a crystal healer, a shamanic practitioner. Okay, and most importantly for today, an experienced animal communicator who helps people understand the deeper messages that animal companions are trying to share. Let's welcome them both to the show.
Welcome! For most of our podcast guests, we always begin by exploring the origins of their profession. Would you mind both sharing with us like how you first discovered that you had this ability, or you that you could communicate with animals? Or was that something that like naturally from very young you remember you could do it?
I mean, I grew up with animals. We had dogs and cats and guinea pigs and even ducks at some points, and rabbits. I always wanted to work with animals, but I didn't want to become a vet. I didn't want to cut them. So I studied something completely different, by the way. I studied languages and economics. And it was only when I came to Singapore that I kind of came across something called body talk, which is not animal communication, but that's where I met my teacher. And when she came up with the class, and that's like consciousness class, body talk. And that's kind of like where I found out that you could kind of communicate on a different level. And then it kind of took off from there. And then my body talk teacher, Lucia, started to teach this, and I was the coordinator. So it was very much removing filters and belief systems, like working on myself to be able to receive the information clearly. And to me, it's animal communication is about listening with your heart. We're always in our heads as human beings, and we're on our devices and we're running at 180 miles an hour. What animals teach you to do is slow down and drop from here into here. And it's a non-verbal universal language, but it's more like a frequency. It's energetic. So it's not like you see the animals speak like this in your mind. It goes through a translator, and then you you hear it in your language, but it's a universal energetic language. So I did classes to kind of develop it. But I think when we were talking, Miss Celine mentioned earlier as well, like kids who don't have so many filters and belief systems, it's much easier for them to tune in with animals because there's that innocence, and they don't have a belief system like, oh, this is weird or that's not possible.
I came from a metaphysical family, so all this energy work are not really foreign concepts to me, but it was much rooted in the Chinese Singaporean tradition, feng shui, that kind. Yeah. So, my family actually does that. Things really shifted when I attended Lucia's animal communication class. So, this journey. So she's my teacher. So thank you very much, Lucia, for bringing that shift in me. So this class was actually a sort of like a huge moment, a self-discovery class. It's not just, if you all attend the class, you all will know it is not just about animal communication. It's so much more, and it's about self-discovery. Then I realized that the things that I've been sensing, hearing, traveling through realms when I was young, are not just my imagination, actually they are real. So it's not just not yet a calling at that point when I attended her class, but it did open my heart to a deeper part of myself that I didn't fully understand. And after that, through more and more modalities that I learned, the universe just pushed me to do this professionally. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then there was one case that came to me, and then she asked me whether I knew an animal communicator to help to speak to her dog. So I asked her to contact Lucia. I remember Lucia asked me, why didn't you do it yourself? So that was my first case, and it started me on this journey.
But like you say, because your family, they knew that there was like the feng shui energy, from feng shui energy to communicating with animals. So was there a moment, like at the start, was it easy for them to understand, or like after a while, then there was a moment that, oh my gosh, you can really communicate with animals? Was there a moment like that? Or?
It was more of, if you're talking about my family, intuition is not new to them. So it's not so much of, you can do this, which is different from what we do as a family. So I didn't really care much about explaining to them what I do, actually. You're talking about people who really ask, like, oh, you can really communicate with animals. I have met a lot of skeptics. But I have to say the people who are more skeptical will become the strongest believers.
Yeah, that's very true.
Really, really. Once they experience that, they become the strongest believers.
I always say to clients, it's very good to be skeptical. When I first started out on this journey, and you're kind of like, well, who am I to say that I'm some animal communicator? And so, and so being skeptical is good. Kind of, people are going to tell you stuff about your animal. And, if I wasn't doing this, I'd be a bit like, yeah, sure. You're going to tell me stuff about my animal. I'd be skeptical. And usually it's the husbands, because usually they get dragged by the wives, and the wives are like, oh, come on, we're going to go to the animal communicator. And then the husband sits there and goes, yeah, sure. And then you see throughout the session, the husband kind of relax and kind of thinking, oh, how does she know this? But again, being skeptical.
Sometimes it's very intimate.
Yeah,
information.
Your animals know everything about you. They live with you 24/7. They know the good, the bad, and the ugly. So there is no hiding, your inner self from your animal. They eavesdrop, and they're spies, and yeah.
Little spies.
Yeah, they are.
Actually, they listen openly, just that sometimes we don't know, and then we think they are spies.
Yeah.
That's true. Given that this is a very unique and niche profession, was there a lot of pushback from your family members when you told them that you wanted to pursue this field as a career?
No, not at all. And so I work full-time at a veterinary clinic as a holistic practitioner. So I do this full-time, also along the body talk stuff. I think they were a little bit puzzled by what I do, because it is a little bit hard to explain. But because I grew up in a household that had so much love and respect for animals, I think they were just like thrilled. And again, maybe not fully understanding what I do, but there was definitely support. And again, I've been very lucky because I work with a vet who supports this, and who hired somebody to to do this in his clinic. So yeah, and do the body talk part as well. Yeah.
When I knew this was the path I wanted to take, I didn't really ask for any opinions. I just went ahead. But my family, because this is not something new to them, so there wasn't really much pushback. It is more of, if you can survive with this, then go ahead because it's your passion.
Now that we really learned that you guys are really more than well qualified to speak on this topic, we are going to ask you some questions, more often or not, that people who have really no idea on how communicating with animals work, right? Especially for myself. I believe I'm one of these people. When you say you do animal communication, that the idea would be similar to like Dr. Dolittle. I believe when you were younger, you watch Dr. Dolittle, or even like Aquaman when they like, is it more on like understanding their body language, or is it their behavior, or
it's listening intuitively. So you have to quieten this first. And then you drop, and again, my class is all about dropping into heart space, but it's creating a kind of almost like an emptiness where you can receive information. It comes in, like Celine mentioned earlier, so it's thoughts, it's feelings in your own body, smells. So all your subtle senses get engaged, and then it comes through what I call a universal translator. So I would still hear it in English because that's, or Dutch because I'm from Holland. But so because you have to have a way to understand the frequency of the energy. I can speak to Japanese dogs or cats or Chinese, even though I'm an Angmo. That's a very common question I get asked. Obviously, it's like, I cannot talk to my dog because you can, or my dog only speak Mandarin, which is a very good question, right? It's a very valid question.
Yeah.
But this stuff goes beyond verbal language. Again, we're talking on an energetic level. And that's why you have to quieten your mind, because then you can receive the information without any kind of static, as it were.
For me, I'm going to promote Lucia's class again.
Thank you.
Her class teaches you how to get messages, not just in audio form, not just in hearing, but in all the different senses. Can't speak the same languages. They can show you images. They can show you how it tastes, whether they like the taste or they don't like the taste, whether they like the smell or don't like the smell. So, very common question people ask, what's your favorite food?
Yeah.
So even if I'm talking to Lucia's dog and Lucia's dog speaks Dutch, I still can know if she likes that food or not. If I get that sense of her tasting the food, and whether I feel that the feeling that she lets me feel is a positive or a negative feel. So all this is all energetic communication rather than like WhatsApp. Yeah, it's not so much of words, but many other subtle cues.
Okay, now if that is the case, do you believe that all humans should be able to communicate with their animals?
So I believe that we can all do this work. I know some people say, oh, you're so special that you can do this. And then my reply is always like, well, I've done a lot of work on myself, to remove the filters and the belief systems. But I think in the core, innately, we can all do this. We've just forgotten how. Not a lot of people just quieten their minds. But for me, we can all do this. So I don't have anybody can come to my class as long as you have an open heart and an open mind. It's like, please come. And usually the people who are the most fearful are like, oh my God, I won't be able to do this. They're usually the people who actually, receive the most information.
Well, I'm a living example of anybody can communicate with animals because I went to Lucia's class. Promotion again.
Yeah, thank you. Commission.
Yeah, but I think it's all about being open and willing to listen.
Yeah.
There are people who judge the pets first before trying to understand them. So all these filters, like what Lucia said, has to be taken away first before effective communication can happen.
Now, I guess coming back to the second part of your question, I think what a lot of people do now is anthropomorphize their pets, that they've become their babies, which is okay, but also not okay, because your dog is still also a dog and might not actually like being clothed all the time, or still wants to walk in grass instead of being in a pram, stuff like that. But it's then ask your animal what they would like. Because I think we put a lot of our stuff on the animal. Also, a lot of times, this is what I say in class, is like we're always, or most of the time, we're telling our animals what to do, right? Come here, get off the couch, let's go, instead of kind of reversing that, because your animal's always communicating with you as well, always. But whether you are tuning in and listening to that, that's the question.
And it's also all about not judging first and not assuming first before listening to the animal. So, for example, if a dog barks on a walk, some guardians may feel embarrassed thinking that their dog is misbehaving. So the first thing to think about is the dog is misbehaving. So that's judging the dog. But the dog could be overwhelmed by sensory overload, the sound of the sun,
yes. Oh, wow.
and all this, and then the other dog that is walking past is just a trigger. It's actually not the other dog's fault. So as a more conscious guardian, I would say, will be opening your heart and your mind to listen to your dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there certain animals that you find that harder to communicate? Or which one do you think is easier to communicate with?
I think harder to communicate, no. More fascinating to communicate with sometimes, yes. If you, we were just talking to Bran earlier, so we've done classes with my teacher in Malaysia with elephants.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the consciousness of elephants and their wisdom, it's very humbling to tune in with that. They're on a different frequency. If you talk to horses, some people say, are land dolphins, horses, because their frequency also very different. So I wouldn't say one is easier than the other, but I guess it's sometimes more fascinating to tune into the different, what we call archetypes. Dogs have the archetype of like the protector. Dogs will literally take on stuff for you so you don't have to go through it. They will become ill and take on your stuff. So cats are more, I would call it smart. Cats are like, well, I'm not going to take on your stuff because why would I do that? But I will hold space for you. Cats are very spiritual. So it's the fascinating thing, I think, of our jobs to be able to tune in with like the whole animal kingdom to experience that difference.
Individually, if the animal is not open or not ready to communicate, then it will be more difficult. Or sometimes it's just, you are not the right person that the animal wish to communicate with. Yeah, there's nothing personal about it. Telling Brandon, I even communicated with the house lizards, asking them to stay away from and please pass the message along to your friend.
How to say, like communication between humans and communication between animals, right? Not that different, The same principles apply. Yeah.
Even when
Even
when you're talking about like people who are hard to communicate, it's the same. What you mentioned, if they are not ready to communicate, it's like the same as I talk to someone who doesn't like me or they're not ready to talk to me, they're closed up. Then communication is it's two-way. Yeah.
So it is also not all dogs are friendly. So why are you a dog and you are not friendly? So you get questions like that. But not all dogs are friendly. Not all humans are friendly too.
True.
Right?
True.
Yeah. So for example, why are you barking when I look into your eyes? Why are you barking when I call you cute? Maybe the dog doesn't like to be called cute.
Okay, because I think one of Lucia's students is one of my friends. So I just want her to share more about her interesting experience bringing her students to the zoo. And then what special animals that you all communicate to. I heard you all sit in front of a very, very special animal, spend about an hour there or something.
Yeah. So it's a 3-day workshop. And on the last day, most of the time we go to the zoo, also because I used to work at the zoo when I first came to Singapore. There's one exercise which we do on the third day, which is kind of, we call it shape-shifting, where you kind of become the animal. You kind of merge with the energy of the animal to see what it's like to be the animal. And this is all with permission, obviously, from the animal. So you always ask first, is it okay, we do this exercise? And of course, if the animal says no, thank you, then you don't do the exercise. So I had one lady who was terrified of snakes, and I decided to do a shapeshift with snakes that time. And she was very brave because she actually did it. And after the exercise, we do a debrief, and she came out of that and she was like, wow, that was actually really fascinating. So she got over a phobia of snakes because she tuned in with the energy of the snake, and then she felt what it was like to be a snake. And she was like, oh, that's actually rather cool. So yeah, we've done this to shapeshift with the tarantula, which is hilarious. We've done the flying fox. So a lot of animals where you can just, get to experience what it's kind of like to have their senses. But yes, we do have a very special friend in the zoo who is Charlie, and it's the male orangutan. And he actually arrived when I was still working at the zoo. He somehow kind of become part of class in a strange way. And it was actually through my teacher who came to visit Singapore. And when I was showing her around, and I was, we passed Charlie's enclosure, and it was like two long lost friends that kind of sat and reconnected. And I was like, wow. And then when we came to class with her, he would come down and he would sit with the participants and kind of be like a guru. It's really like, we would sit and teach and tell people stuff about themselves. So when I started teaching, of course, I was like, oh, I hope he does this with me as well. Because, and I have to say, with every class that I've done, we've been really lucky. He comes and sits with the class. And it's incredibly, I was going to say mind-blowing, actually heart-blowing, because he opens up your heart field. And I mean, Celine will share her experience with Charlie, and so he's kind of become part of the class, because even if he's doing stuff at the back, we will go and sit in the corner, and I will gently ask him, I've come with class, can you please come down? And sometimes it takes a while, it's not instant like yes. And then he will come and sit, and he will recognize the energy of the people in class, because the energy changes through the class. So it's almost like he recognizes their frequency. So usually after we've done, we'll get up, and people behind us, visitors, will be like, oh great, now we get to sit with the orangutan.
It's all clinics.
yeah. And then usually he'll walk away, because he's like, okay, we're done.
I'm done.
So it's very humbling. It's super, super special. Yeah, Celine, if you want to share your experience when you went to see him.
He's a guru, and he really opens your heart. So when I went there, once I looked into his eyes, I started crying. So it was all the emotional release that I was holding back, that couldn't be released due to life. You're not strong enough. And then I started crying. After meeting Charlie, your life really changes, and it is not just one time meeting Charlie. Sometimes you will hear him, and he will tell you, it's time to come back and visit me.
Yeah. He'll summon you.
Yes. Yes. He summons you.
Yes.
And then you have to go. And you have to sit with him. He just has this
Aura
that makes you sit with him.
Well, he sounds like a village chief.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I guess in a way, yeah.
The shaman, yes.
The shaman, yeah, absolutely. I feel it's a bit like receiving a telephone call from the teacher. It's like, okay, it's time to come and see.
Yeah, it sounds exactly like that. Like when you say that he summons you to come back, it sounds like he drops you a call. Hey, I miss you. It's time to come back. Yeah, can you please come visit me?
And everybody gets it. Everybody gets it.
Yeah, like students will. Yeah, I will have pictures of Facebook, of students with Charlie, and I had it a few years ago where I kind of received the telephone call telepathically. It's like, it's time for you to come and see me. And then I kind of was telling him, I'm going to be at the zoo in 2 weeks because I'm coming with class. And in my head, I heard, no, you need to come and see me. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had to come by myself, and it was the most perfect day. We went quite late, and there was nobody at the enclosure, and I got to sit with him by myself for an hour.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So yeah, it's very special. And he recognizes you when you come back.
That sounds
He
perfect.
will put his heart on the glass enclosure when he recognizes you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Most people who've experienced it, they do say that it kind of changed their lives, that experience. And it's a bit of a shame now because they rotate him with some female orangutans at the moment. So the last 2 classes I did, he wasn't in the enclosure. So that was a bit of a shame for the people who, went to class, because of course everybody has these great expectations.
Actually, I wanted to ask just now, when you mentioned that people ask to communicate with their own animals, in this case, there are a lot of times it's because there's something troubling their animals. Common circumstance or situation in which like the animals may be experiencing a traumatic phase and refuse to communicate.
Trauma is quite a common one, especially from rescue groups. So people who have, animals who have experienced trauma like abandonment, abuse, and sudden loss of companion, sometimes they retreat inwards. Might be hesitant to communicate at first. Just like humans, they need to feel safe. They need to trust that someone is listening without judgment. So there's a cat, right, who experienced trauma. He was actually terrified by the rescuer who rescued him because of the trapping.
Oh.
So he didn't want to communicate at first. So I shapeshifted to a cat to make him feel more comfortable. But I'm not a human. I'm not a human that, the human people who trap you. And I'm a cat. So if you go to Lucia's class, you can do that. And then the cat really opened up. And now he is the sweetest boy. So although trauma is common, although abuse, abandonment especially, can be very common, but each animal needs something different. So you have to be creative.
Human beings, we're capable, right? We want to know everything. We want to know what happened. Was it really bad? And how? And what animals have taught me throughout the years, it's like sometimes we don't need to delve into the story, right? We like to rewind the movie and go back and go like, it was so terrible. And sometimes the animal says, you know what? Yeah, but I don't need to do that. I'm here now and I'm really happy with these people and I've left it behind. Then you don't go and push like, yeah, but we need to know what happened. Because if they say, I don't want to go there, or maybe they're not ready to go there, and maybe they really have left it behind. That's a very human thing that we're like, we want to know the details. So that's something that I've learned. And if they say, I'm happy now, I'm in the present. That is what animals teach us, to be in the now. And very true what Celine said. It's like you need to make them feel safe. Don't go threatening animals with like, well, if you don't do that, if you don't behave, this is going to happen. That's not the right way to communicate with animals. It's like, it's
not the Asian mother.
Yeah. In Singapore, you see that very, very, very more often.
I just like to ask, any memorable interactions that you all can share?
So many.
The most memorable one was a cat whose guardian told her, please don't eat lizard. Yeah. So the cat replied, I don't eat lizards. I only play with them. But I eat moth. And then she sent me this feeling of having the moth in her mouth. Then I could feel it fluttering. I can taste it. And then along that comes that surge of hunter instincts, pure excitement. Wow, the heart was beating so fast. When I was experiencing it, it was gross but
Yeah.
But it's actually quite hilarious and very, very real. I don't have to experience.
Yeah, you experienced it enough already.
Quite early on in my career, I was doing a session for a dog. And again, because I work at a vet clinic, it was something about this dog needed surgery because it was having calcium deficiency. So his bones kept on breaking. And so we were doing what we call a pre-surgery session, kind of preparing the dog for the surgery. And then at some point, I hear in my head the dog say, just chop them off. I was like, excuse me? And he said, yeah, just chop the legs off. And I was like, oh. So sometimes you receive information that you think is so crazy that you don't even want to share it with the guardian because you think they're going to think I'm completely mad. Long story short, the dog went for surgery. The pins didn't hold. So in the end, he didn't need to have his legs amputated, or one or two, I can't remember. But I remember when he came back for another session, he kind of said, I told you already what, you know. So they kind of also sometimes know what's going to happen in the future. I had a dog recently that knew that his guardian was going to become pregnant when the lady didn't even.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, so stuff like that. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I think we would like to do a short series of quick-fire questions. Do you prefer talking to humans or animals?
Both. I like.
What's the weirdest thing you have heard from an animal?
Dog once greeted me and say, "Hello, my name is Sui Zai."
Wow.
Yes, because the guardian's mother speaks in Cantonese and she always calls him Sui Zai.
So what does that mean?
Rascal.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
rascal. Yeah. Dealing with cat or dealing with dog?
Oh, I love them. Ask me to choose.
There been a case when you did not tell the owner what the animal is saying on purpose.
No, I tell it as it is.
What is the best and worst thing about your job?
The best thing is to witness the relationship between the animals and the humans after the deep conversation. The worst thing is to deal with skeptics who test and purposely invalidate you.
Ayo, okay. Okay, Lucia, communicating with humans or animals?
Same answer, both. Both fascinating.
Weirdest thing you have heard from an animal?
I'm afraid of the cooking pot. I have to elaborate on that story a little bit. So again, I was doing a session and this dog, I heard this dog say, "I'm afraid of the cooking pot." And I was like, "Walao, cannot say this to these people." And it was a very nice young couple. But the dog kept insisting. So then at some point I turned to the couple and I said, "Okay, this is going to sound very strange, but your dog keeps saying she's afraid of the cooking pot." And then in unison, this couple went, "Oh no, when she's naughty, we sometimes tell her like, 'Hey, if you don't behave, we'll cook you in the cooking pot.'" So, So the dog obviously heard that or received the message because, you know, they receive the visual image you send out as well. So this dog was terrified that she was going to get cooked in the cooking pot.
My mom used to say that.
Oh, is it?
Okay, dealing with cats or dealing with dogs?
Oh, both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has there been a case where you did not tell the owner what the animal is saying on purpose?
Yes. And also I remember this distinctly. It was a case of where I think the dog was telling me that there was some tension in the household, as in between the couple, between the husband and the wife. And then I very gently asked the lady, like, "Oh, could it be that there is some tension?" She said, no, nothing. And then the dog in my head went, "She's lying." So obviously I didn't say that to the guardian because again, you receive sensitive information. And I was like, you know what? If she's not open to sharing that with me, of course, then you're not going to push, right? And sometimes it's just validating and acknowledging the animal and their feelings so that they have been heard. It's a bit like what you say, humans, sometimes it just helps when you have shared your story. It's like, okay, I'm not going to say that to her. Yeah.
Best and worst thing about your job?
Same answer as Celine, actually. It's like seeing the change in dynamics between the guardian and the animals when they have this aha moment of like, wow, okay, so that's what they've come to. Oh, now I understand them better. And it so makes your job just so worthwhile. Worst, I guess maybe it's a little bit like dealing with maybe nowadays a lot of animal communicators who think after doing one class they're professional animal communicators. So it kind of muddies the field a little bit because that sometimes gets you a very bad reputation or gets the profession a bad reputation because people will have had experience where they're like, well, this is a bunch of, rubbish. I'm very strict with my students. I'm like, having done one class doesn't make you a professional animal communicator because this work comes with a lot of responsibility. Again, you're not just like, should I get the red shoes or the blue shoes? No, you're telling people stuff about their animal that could influence the decisions they make. Exactly. And the decisions they potentially make about, veterinary care or stuff or, I don't take that lightly. And I know Celine doesn't either. It really comes with a lot of responsibility.
Now, I think we have learned a lot from you both today. But just to close out the episode, could you let the audience know where they can find you online?
My Instagram account is called Rhythm of Life Holistic Path, a dot in between every word. And my website is www.soulplan.sg. So soul as in the soul, spirit, the soul, plan, PLAN.
For me, it's the website, which is www.natural and then a dash, so the one in the middle, connection with an X.com.
Yeah, I think our producer also put the links to all your socials and the websites when the episode is out. So thank you both for your time and wishing you a perfect week ahead.
Thank you very much
thank you so
for the
much.
opportunity. Thank you.